Are you tired of the headaches that come with owning rental properties? Are you worried about the tenants, the toilets, the trash, the taxes? Do you just want passive income? In this episode, we'll share an amazing solution that allows you to earn passive income without the headaches of becoming a landlord. Hi, I'm Randy Ihara.
And I'm Dan Ihara.
And welcome to the Advisor Podcast. We are real estate wealth advisors in Hawaii, and in today's episode, we have two special guests, John Taylor and Andres Ichaso. Welcome, guys.
Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, we appreciate it.
So,
pleasure to be here.
Yeah, Andres and John are with JRW Investments. JRW is a due diligence-driven real estate firm that has been helping investors complete successful 1031 exchanges for over 2 decades. John and Andres have guided hundreds of investors through the transition from active property ownership to true passive income strategies, primarily through Delaware Statutory Trust, also known as DSTs, and other institutional-grade real estate solutions. At JRW, their mission is to help clients become free, secure, and generous by protecting their equity, generating steady cash flow, and providing education-based guidance through every step of the process. So in today's episode, we'll answer 3 simple questions that everyone wants to know. So number 1, what is a DST? 2, why have you not heard about it? And number 3, what are the pros and cons of a DST? So we can just go ahead and start and tell us, what is a DST? Can you give us a little bit of a background of that?
Yeah. So a DST, as you mentioned, stands for Delaware Statutory Trust. It's a vehicle that's been around, officially approved by the IRS since 2004. They were around prior to that, but in 2004, the IRS gave a ruling 2004-86, where they gave guidelines as to how the Delaware Statutory Trust needs to be put together, structured, for it to qualify as a like-kind investment in a 1031 exchange. Prior to 2004, the DSTs being approved, investors would manage properties and sell those properties and buy more properties to manage individually. And since the DST comes around, that allows investors to now go from that active management to more of a passive cash flowing type of investment.
Yeah, one of the ways that I describe a DST is it's an opportunity for you to own institutional properties, right? Large 100, 200, $500 million properties fractionally, right? Or another way that I'll explain it to investors is it's an opportunity to acquire a property that you can't afford otherwise, right? So I would say 99% of the equity that's directed toward a Delaware Statutory Trust is 1031 exchange proceeds. And so that really has become maybe the best kept secret of 1031 exchanges, not widely known for various reasons that we can talk about, but it allows investors to take advantage of the characteristics that just the big boys have been taking advantage of. The larger institutions are now accessible to a smaller retail investor.
Yeah. And one of the advantages is the like kindness of the Delaware Statutory Trust allows investors to change from asset class to asset class. So when we're looking at the entirety of the DST space, you find multifamily, retail, office, self-storage, senior housing. Investors can go from one individual property and now diversify into multiple asset classes, institutionally managed real estate across the U.S.
Yeah, many of your investors, they probably have a living trust, right? If they're retirement age or over, or if they have significant assets, those assets are held in a living trust. And a living trust is a grantor trust, right? It's a framework that allows you to grant assets to that trust. A Delaware Statutory Trust is a grantor trust as well. It's a trust structure that allows for a sponsor, right, an institutional real estate company, to buy a property, right, to grant that property to a trust, and then to create a real estate security instrument for investors to participate in. So, the DST is a disregarded entity right? Everything flows through directly to the investors themselves.
Mhm.
And so economically, and owning a part of a Delaware statutory trust is materially similar to owning the real estate directly. It's a disregarded trust entity. The sponsor in this relationship plays the role of the trustee. The investors are the beneficiaries, and the sponsor's responsibilities include buying the property, managing the property, and selling the property, and they've already bought the property and are managing it prior to any retail investor participating. And so there's a lot of known variables when we're directing investors toward specific Delaware Statutory Trust investments, right? We know the location, we know the tenant, we know the lease, we know the loan terms. We know the historical trailing 12 months or 24 months worth of operating history. We have the P&L. We know the competitors to that particular property in the local market or nationally. We know the price. It's buying an inventoried product. They're not aggregating funds like in other syndications that you may be familiar with. They're not aggregating investor dollars to go and hopefully maybe buy something.
Mhm.
They've already taken the risk of buying the property and inventorying that property on behalf of retail investors, and then they're peeling off fractional ownership for the 1031 exchange investors.
Mm.
Yeah.
It almost sounds too good to be true, right? It sounds like a good passive income. What are the risks? What should we be concerned with? How safe is this?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it could be a daunting process for someone to sell a single family residence or a duplex or even a 10-unit apartment complex and then going to something like an Amazon distribution center or a FedEx or it's a different asset class. There are different types to evaluate those investments, and that's really uh, the key of having a company like JRW handling the due diligence.
Mhm.
As you mentioned earlier, we've been around since 2002, 2003. We've been analyzing these types of vehicles for the last 20 plus years. And it's important. It's important to know who the sponsors are. It's important to know what are their fees to get into the investment. Are they making money up front? Are they making money at the end? What are their management fees? Um, our analysis is going to be looking at every different asset class, analyzing cap rates, historical cap rates. What are the right valuations that we should buy multifamily in 2025 or 2024 or 2026? And that's what we bring to the table. It's the analysis. Again, it's a new space, and we recognize that it is a new space for a lot of the investors that we're helping and assisting. At some point and at some level in the conversation, there's a certain level of trust that we know what we're doing, that we know how to analyze real estate, and that we've been doing this for a couple of decades. So we try to simplify the process of actually making a specific recommendation for our clients.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the too good to be true. Uh, I'd like to separate the DST into two different components for the audience. The first component is the structure and the strategy. The structural benefits are really obvious, and that's kind of ubiquitous across the entire market. But then there's the individual investment itself, and the quality of that investment is driven through economic variables. So I'll kind of I'll say that the structure is very, very good,
Yeah.
right? It's passive, it's done for you. It's infinitely fractional. So, for an estate planning standpoint, you can allow, if you have five children, you can divide your DST portfolio or your investment five ways, just like a stock on the stock market. That's a fantastic structural benefit. The debt is non-recourse. That's a great structural benefit. Um, there are asset classes, like we've talked about before, that allow you to move between different strategies for small amounts of money. For $150,000, you can buy a portion of an Amazon distribution center. That's a
Mhm.
great structural benefit. Um, the consideration, though, on the other side, is that there are investments that I would say are not uh, obviously beneficial for investors to make. It's like you guys, like anytime you buy anything, right? You're looking at comparables. Saying, should I buy an Apple phone or an Android phone? Should I buy, whatever, what kind of car should I drive? You're comparing different things.
Mm-hmm.
From a real estate investment standpoint, we think about three different components, right? We think about number one, the price that our investors are paying for this property. It seems obvious. It's a little bit obscure, right? So the price of a multifamily apartment building might be $120 million. The best first question that your listeners can ask somebody like us is, what is the market value of that property? Right? What is the market value of that property? What are the comps? Bring the comps to the table. There are absolutely comps that we can show or that should be shown. And sometimes we come back and we say the market value of this property is 105 million. Okay, but it's being sold for 120. So if you're buying a fractional piece of that property, you're overpaying by a pretty significant percentage. That's a consideration that you need to understand going in, but you have to do the work. You have to do the due diligence to understand the comps. So that's okay. The first one is the price. The second is the operating model of the property, right? Your investors, your listeners have investments today. The economics of that is driven by how much rent are they getting on a monthly basis, and what are all the expenses that fall underneath of that. You ask your investors all the time, what's your cap rate?
Yep.
Well, we're asking the same question of these properties. What is the economic driver? The top line rent, they're competing for that rent in their local market. If it's a multifamily apartment building and we look at the average rent for a two bedroom, two bath in the apartment and it's $1,280 a month. The most important thing for me to know, of the four other apartment buildings in that surrounding area, what's their average rent for a two bed, two bath? And if their average rent's 1,000 a month, like, we're gonna have a hard time competing for the tenant, right? We know that we're the top of market tenant, top of market rent, and it's going to be challenging for us to push rents higher or to see rents get pushed higher. We want to be the opposite of that. So when we look at our specific investment, we want to say, okay, we're $1,000 a month rent. The market, going market is 1,280, 1,300, 1,100, whatever it is. We can raise our rent to market because maybe the previous owner mismanaged the property. Maybe it was a mom and pop property manager and they didn't realize the economic potential of the submarket. So we look for those things. We don't want to overpay. We don't want to be the top of market rent with nowhere to go but flat or down, which is what I think a lot of institutional multifamily has experienced 2023, 2024. And then lastly, we want to think about the exit. So first one is price, second one is operating model, third one is the exit strategy. We want to ensure that the time horizon, right, and that the exit options are in line with the financial plan and goals of our clients. And there are some considerations there that just need to be understood. DSTs are illiquid vehicles, meaning once you make an investment, you can't just withdraw your money like an ATM, right? It's real estate. So you own the sticks and the bricks. You own the land underneath the building. There is no more money in that DST. It's all asset. It's all property. And the opportunity for us to get our money back is when the sponsor sells the property on behalf of the investor. And so we want to think about the full cycle of that investment as a business model before we're going to put a client into that.
What's the average cycle look like in today's market?
Yeah, I would say the average is somewhere between 4 and 6 years. We have worked with specific DSTs that have a sale shorter than that in the 2 to 3 years. There are two main exits from DSTs. One is a market-driven exit, and we see this especially with multifamily, where a sponsor can buy a multifamily development and they intend to sell in years 4 to 6 or 6 to 8 or 8 to 10. But it's more of a market driven. When is the right price to sell this specific asset? And then there are a lot of DSTs that have structured sales. When you have a structured sale, you know who the buyer is going to be, and you have a pretty good idea as to when that sale is going to occur. That could be in 2 years, that could be in 5 years. And we haven't talked about this yet, but that's a popular exit these days, and that's into REITs. So there are a lot of REITs that are coming into the DST industry These REITs operate DSTs and they offer what's called a 721 exchange. So investors can go from their individual property into a DST, and then either in 2 years or 5 years or 7 years, those DSTs are acquired by a REIT. That REIT transition is called a 721 UPREIT. It's also a tax deferred transaction, but it is the end of the 1031 cycle. So investors need to be aware of that. They would be receiving shares of a REIT in exchange for their ownership in the DST. For a lot of our investors, that is exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah.
They don't want to have to deal with another $1 million, $2 million decision 5 years down the road. And they want to go into a DST that already tells them this is our exit strategy and it's a structured exit. So I guess to answer your question, anywhere from 2 to 10 years. I have investments in DSTs from 2013 that are still operating. That was the structure, that was the plan, that's what the sponsor intended to do. And that's what my clients wanted. They just wanted a steady, consistent, boring distribution for the next 15, 20 years, where they could just leave everything to their heirs once they passed away.
Yeah, for those in the audience, I think one of the reasons why we have John and Andres on the call is because they became a really positive solution for many of our clients. When we ask the client, would you like to have an active investment or passive investment? Almost everybody picks passive. If they're a baby boomer and older, they're selecting passive. And if it's passive, then this is a really good solution. So Julie and I did this when COVID happened, right? And we wanted to get out of managing a property because there was a law that said if the tenant didn't pay, you couldn't kick him out. And well, that didn't sit well with me, so we liquidated. But here's the funny thing in all transparency is we had an asset that was at 2.1% return, and now we're getting 4.5% return. So I'm making more money. I have no issue with the tenant, and I don't have to worry about anything regarding that property, and I didn't pay capital gain tax. Yeah. So as a fan and as a user of the DST, it is an option for many folks who want to have a passive investment.
Yeah, it almost sounds too good to be true, right? If you're making more money, you defer the capital gains taxes, you create a good legacy plan so that you can easily divide the property after you're passing and the transition of wealth to the next generation. I mean, all those things are so good. I mean, why would someone not want to do a DST, right? It almost sounds too good.
No, that's a good point. I think the structure itself is what we rely on. The fact that there is a ruling, the fact that the IRS approves the DST, we rest in peace at that. Ultimately, what matters is what are we buying? What is the sponsor acquiring? What is the asset class? And as John was describing, what did they pay? What are their fees? What is their exit strategy? What we thrive in is two things. It's the access to the market. It's knowing the DSTs that are available in the marketplace today in the U.S. And then not only access, not only the availability of, hey, these are the 90, the 95, the 105 DSTs available, but more importantly, which ones make sense? Which ones, again, were bought at the right price, have fees that are not egregious, have a good exit strategy. And does that exit strategy match with my clients, with my investors' plans? So that is really where the rubber meets the road is what are we going to recommend out of the entire DST market? If we're taking more of a blind approach to these are the 90, these are the 95 DSTs, pick the one that you like. There is a good chance that investors will lose capital. We don't think all DSTs are amazing. The structure itself, we love. What IRS allows us to do since 2004 is great, and we should take advantage of that. But ultimately, what are we buying? And that's really what we try to do for investors is we try to help them pick the right DST out of the entire list.
Yeah, we review over 500 real estate investments every year for our clients. And historically, we approve less than 10%.
Wow.
If we went, it's probably more like, 6 or 7% of what we review. We are confident enough in to encourage our clients to make that investment. And I think that's what our clients are looking for. They're looking for a third party due diligence office who can give them clarity into what they're buying. The too good to be true component also is just it's a simple math problem around what's happened today in single family rentals.
Mm.
So you guys see this in your market.
Oh
We
yeah.
see this in Los Angeles market. Single family homes are two different things. They're either a utility for the people who are living in them and raising their families in them, and that value is much different than an investor valuation.
Yeah.
It's like, where are my kids going to go to school? Are the parks across the street safe? Do I have access to the local, shopping that I want to be around? That's a valuation driver, all of that. The rental market, right? That same home could be a rental. It could be bought by an investor who is a landlord who puts a rental, agreement together, and there's a tenant in place. The landlord is valuing that property value based on the rent that's coming off of it.
Mhm.
Well, what's happened from about 2010 until 2025, there has been an unprecedented increase in the valuation
Mm-hmm.
of single family homes all across the US,
Mm-hmm.
right? This shows up in news conversations about affordability of housing, right? It's a challenging time for first-time home buyers to access single family homes. Well, think about what that's done on the rental side, right? As values have grown significantly, the landlord's ability to raise the rent has been capped
Yeah.
by affordability, or in some places capped by legislation, rent control.
Mhm.
And that's why you can have a place like Hawaii that has a cap rate on a single family rental of less than 2%,
Mm-hmm.
or in Los Angeles County, oftentimes less than 1.5 or 1%.
Mm-hmm.
And just the simple repositioning of that equity into a boring commercial property like a grocery store. The grocery store is spinning off 4.5, 5.5%. That's not an unbelievable return. That's a very modest return. That's a
Mm-hmm.
very uh, competitive return without taking much risk at all. But that's an asset class that's purely an investment asset class.
Mm-hmm.
And so investors value that property based on the risk that they're willing to take. It's an interesting opportunity right now for those who own single family rentals to just do, and Dan, your audience knows
Yeah.
this, like do the cap rate analysis.
Yeah.
You call it the asset
Asset
performance
performance
test,
test.
right?
Yeah.
Understand what you have now, because then you can compare it to what you could own otherwise. And the 1031 exchange allows you to reposition basically for free into
Yeah.
anything else that you want that's an investment property.
Yeah. 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 Very true. I think the greatest solution that the DST provides for our clients is that passive income, right? Because there's investors out there that want 8-10%. Well, this is not the solution for that, right? Because we're looking at closer to 4 to 6% return. The really benefit is the savings of the capital gain tax, right?
Mm.
The 1031 exchange is the solution to keep money in the family's pocket and remove the burden of owning it, right? Because if they sell investment property they don't want, they got to go buy another investment property that they're still having the same burdens on, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. The true passive solution is really where it's at. So remember the O family. We had a family that had dad passed away, and mom was in a care home, and she needed some money to cover the care because care is expensive, right? And then they're dwindling down in their cash. And yet they had two properties. You remember that, guys? The two $1.5 million properties that they didn't want anymore. Both of them were deferred maintenance. Both of them had very low cash flow. I think it was between 1.25 and 1.8 cap rates on both of those. All paid off. So there's a $3 million sitting on the shelf, but they don't have much access to money, right? And they didn't want it. They didn't want it because they didn't want the burden of owning it. But they also were a little bit concerned about when she goes. I mean, somebody's got to make decisions on keeping it or selling it, and therefore concerned about family disputes.
Yeah.
And so I remember when we were talking to them, I asked them, would you like to have passive or active investment? They said passive. And then we introduced them to you all, right? We introduced you to you. Then they said, well, gosh, the DST sounds great, but I don't want to do another 1031 exchange, right? And then we offer them the opportunity for the UPREIT, right? The 721 UPREIT. And I don't believe it's gotten there yet, right? It went straight to the DST, is that right?
Correct. Yeah, they're currently in the DST stage, so they're in that boring passive 4 to 5 year of steady cash flow on a monthly basis, and then the potential REIT exit will happen in about 3.5 years.
Right. But meanwhile, they're getting 5% versus they weren't even getting 2.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And remember, if my memory serves me right, this was the family who like we understand the tax implications, right? So JRW, for your listeners, we were a CPA firm for 2 decades before we were repositioned into a wealth management office with a focus on this real estate planning component. We're no longer actively a tax service, but we understand the tax implications. This was the family who, right? And if not this family, we can pivot to another case study, but didn't dad pass away very close to the transaction time of this 1031 exchange? And because we understood the step up in cost basis, we were actually able to hold back a pretty significant amount of the potential equity, that could have gone into a DST.
Right.
And we were able to just simply withdraw that from the qualified intermediary and distribute that to mom
Yeah.
with no tax consequences at all.
Yeah.
And so created a much more robust balance sheet for her as she's in the care home and has escalating expenses through this period of life. So, we're not going to put people into a DST unless it makes sense for number one, their tax considerations, number two, their financial objectives and goals, whether it meets our, investment acquisition criteria through our due diligence office, like then it becomes a recommendation. Whereas I think if you navigate this market without that perspective, what you kind of run into a lot is, well, here's a recommendation, and here's a recommendation, and here's a recommendation, and here's a recommendation. And it's kind of like without the context or the framework or the filter of what is really, really right for this family.
Yeah.
And that was something that we uncovered late in the game. It's like, whoa, you don't need to do the full 1031.
That's right.
You can take half of this out with no tax implication. You
Yeah.
should take it,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, because life changes, right? And it
Life
happened
changes.
life changes happened on our watch. But because it was on our watch, we were able to pivot for the betterment of the family, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
by doing that, you all made less money, right?
Yeah, like half.
Yeah.
Like half as much.
Right. You made half as
Yeah.
much money. You didn't have to.
Yeah.
Many people would have just kept going forward
Yeah.
and kept the process forward. But and that's one of the reasons why we partner with JRW, because together we're really mission-based capitalists. We're believers that believe that we have to look out for the client's best interests. In order to do that, we have to understand what their best interest is. So we'll start with a series of questions to just find out what matters most to the family, and we'll guide them in that direction. We don't have a pre-plan, and nor do they have a pre-plan of what we're buying and selling, right? It's a collaboration with the family, and that's why they enjoy us.
Yeah, and I think speaking specifically on the Oda family, that's not a transaction for us. That is a relationship.
Yeah.
That is a client that we connect with and that I personally speak to every month. So we value that relationship more than just a sale. That's not what we're in this industry for. We're here for the relationship. We're here to help investors, and not only them, but then the heirs and then the next generation through building real estate wealth.
Awesome.
I'll also say, and this is probably not the purpose of this is not for me to interview you, but what we have found working in this industry for decades, engaging with agents and brokers often, right? Because it's a real estate transaction. We're only on the buy side of the 1031. We're never on the sell side when it's a traditional property. The Ihara team, right, and the agents that you teach and coach have a unique perspective that's mission driven, which is always in the best interest of the client.
Absolutely.
Right. In the same way that we made less of a commission because we were able to return capital to this family tax free, you're also not making any money on the DST.
That's right.
You're doing it because it is in the best interest of the family in a unique case.
Yeah.
And even when you present that to the family and when we support that, we always present it in parallel with other options, right? You could pay the tax. This is what that's going to cost. You could buy a property in another market, but you're going to need a property manager. You could buy a home for your child to live in. Do you have any children who have affordability issues with the home? They could rent from you. There's the DST option, right? So it's always a wide aperture of opportunities, and we're letting the client understand all the options. And when it makes sense, then, as Andre said, like they're a client for the rest of their life. They're a client of ours. We get the quarterly statements on the performance of all the DSTs every quarter of all the DSTs that we're in. And by the way, that's about $3 billion worth of real estate that we've put people into over the last 10 years.
Wow.
So, it's a lot of ongoing relationship with clients. And so we're not incentivized by the transaction. We are truly using this as an instrument to transform the lives of our clients.
Yeah, we could go on for hours telling us the audience stories of success, and it looks like we might have to bring them back to share more stories, because I think there's a lot that could pertain to the audience. For us, we ask the simple question: do you need the income to sustain the life you desire? If the answer is yes, then we'll go find ways to make more money. If the answer is no, we're going to ask, who would you like to bless within your family, right? Because money is good for the good it does. And most people say they're going to die with their money, and then they get split up. Well, my question is, why would you wait, right? We can create plans for that. And the DST has been our go-to solution for those who want passive income. In addition to that, even if you want to buy another property, they're our go-to safety net. And this is why we've never failed a 1031 exchange, because we use them as a safety net at the end of the day. If something bad shows up at the end, and I think you have a story just today, which was ironic, right?
Yeah, I do.
That failure happened at the 44th day, and then what, right? This could be a solution in a safety net.
Do you want me to tell that story?
We'd rather be involved. We'd rather be involved 6 months before the sale. But, occasionally, we do get called in on day 44, and that's what John had to deal with today.
Yeah.
And here I come to save the day.
Well, it's not ideal for anybody, but it was actually an agent that you coach, Dan, who called me and said, "Hey, I've just uncovered an issue. We were going to close on a local property, but my client isn't financeable, not lendable. Credit score came back less than ideal. And so the option is to do a hard money loan that maybe we can refinance. But then we're talking about 2 million. It's probably, I did the capital gains analysis. It's a $1.2 million capital gain.
Wow.
Okay. And so the option right now, 3 hours ago, the option was pay the tax, which is a really big tax bill. I'm thinking it's $300,000 tax bill, give or take. And what we are able to do, it's a really cool story. So we're able to put them into a structured DST that allows them to put $125,000 down to cover about $650,000, $700,000 worth of debt that they have to bring forward from their relinquished property. We can do a whole class on 1031s if we're losing people. I don't want to get technical, but it's $125,000 down to cover all their debt, and they don't have to qualify for that. They don't have to get pre-approved. Their credit score doesn't matter. They are the beneficiary of that debt through this trust structure. What that allows for is they've got another $700,000 of equity that they're going to identify three things with. They're going to identify the home that they really want to buy, and they want to Airbnb it in a really good location. They have a second potential Airbnb property that they want to buy. And then the third is they're going to back that up with the safety net option of an all cash DST. So the all cash DST allows them to back up both of those rentals. And if they can't get financing, then they have a backup that's going to save them a couple $100,000, which is, by the way, it's a great investment. It's just not their plan A. Their plan A is an Airbnb property, and that's what I hope they can get. But they need time. They need like 3 weeks to figure it out, and we can buy them that time with the assurance that it's not going to cost them a couple $100,000.
When did their 45 days expire?
tomorrow. They just called me today. Yeah.
I like
Yeah,
the
so I
tone.
actually hung up with them to do this podcast,
Oh,
and I'm
no
going to call them
kidding.
right after and figure it out. Yeah, like
Oh, that was
they
awesome.
they've got a lot going on over there.
Yeah, yeah.
But the assurance that I gave them is like, we're always positioned to buy today.
Mm-hmm.
I know exactly what I'm buying today. I know the whole market.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's uncomfortable for the investor.
Yeah.
And I recognize that. I'm like, look, you walked into the ER. I'm the ER doctor. You're in cardiac arrest, and I'm going to fix you, but you have to do exactly what I say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that's not a comfortable position to be in, but I'm prepared. We're prepared for that.
Yeah.
We'd prefer to meet them 3 years ago,
Yeah.
not 3 hours ago, but you know, sometimes that's what we're called for.
So for the audience, the 1031 exchange, the 45 days is a designation rule. You're required to designate your replacement properties. And that's what they were able to do today. They're not closing on that today. No, we're just designating 3 options. They've got 180 days to close on those, but at least they preserve their right to save $300,000 of capital gains tax, right? So they bought a little bit of time. But without making that call to you, John, without having you available to provide a solution, they don't have solutions. They're out, right? And so for the audience, just know that there's the DST could be a really good safety net.
Mm-hmm.
The thing too, so the safety net's a good case study. We don't have to tell a specific story on this, but another really good opportunity for people to invest in DST is through the balance of an exchange, right? If they sold
Right.
$1 million property and they identify a really great $800,000 property they want to buy, they still have a gap of 200, and that's difficult to place.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what can you buy for 200 if you don't want to manage a small single family home in another part of the country?
Yeah.
Well, that's a great kind of dipping your toe into the DST market with a small exposure, diversified approach that still saves significant taxes. That's a really good success story as well that happens quite often.
Yeah. For the 1031 exchange audience, if you're selling a property, you can buy more than one. You can assign more than one, right? And so it gives you some flexibility as to how you want to approach your future of wealth transfer in real estate. Yeah. Well, this has been awesome. I think we're going to have him come back on because there's more stories I think we need to share that will bring value to folks at some point. Well, anyways, as we wrap up, we just want to say thank you so much for tuning into the Advisor Podcast. If you got value from today's conversation, then please check out our previous episodes or visit iharateam.com to learn how we help families build wealth, protect wealth, and pass it on through real estate. That's all we have for today. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate your time, and aloha.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.